Let's bring in founder of LA Mom magazine, Shirin Yadigar, Israeli Special Ops veteran Aaron Cohen, board-certified plastic surgeon Dr. Sheila Nazarian, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, Chabad of Bel Air Rabbi Chaim Mentz, former Navy SEAL Cameron Hamilton, and former Deputy National Security Advisor Steve Yates. Thank you all for coming on. I want to play this sound. It's from a congressman here in California who says some silly things, but this is about as preposterous as it gets. He kind of went out of his way. It's call for number 5, Katie. Watch this.
Again, I don't sense that they had any idea what they were doing, and they showed nothing to the American people as to any threat posed to the United States or any imminent threat posed to our allies who are in the region. I see a president who is quite distracted.
I mean, Cameron Hamilton, to you first to kind of get this conversation going, how much do you have to hate Trump to literally sit there with a straight face and say that Iran posed no threat to virtually anyone?
Well, TDS is a real thing, and hopefully Dr. Shazarian has someone that she can refer to, Congressman Swalwell, because I think he suffers from it greatly. Having said that, clearly he doesn't have a good understanding, nor is he in the necessary need to know as it pertains to this military operation. Preemptive strikes are real. Iran has significant infrastructure that was capable of harming a lot of Americans. We use much in the Middle East, such as the UAE and other areas, to launch significant drone and aviation oversight in the region. Iran has continually threatened that preemptively multiple times. Plus, their Navy has been a continuate belligerent force there in the region. So I think the president acted accordingly. I would hope that the congressman would find himself to be better informed.
Yeah, he handed the baton to Dr. Nazarian, so I think that's where we should go.
You know, I think that this needs to be addressed, this sort of verbiage. I'm hearing it a lot online. And what the American people need to understand is growing up in Iran, we were made to chant death to America since preschool. And it's not just a chant, it is their stated goal. It's their like life's mission to get to heaven. So if Swalwell doesn't think that our children or our grandchildren would be greatly harmed by a strong nuclear fully stockpiled Iran, he is completely delusional, because they will not stop trying to take down America and our citizens unless they are stopped by us.
Yeah, but it's kind of amazing when you hear that kind of rhetoric, Rabbi, from somebody who is basically in Congress. And I know the hatred is deep for Trump. We all get that. But when you look at the facts, and if you study Iran at all, you know it's preposterous.
You know, I'm going to say something outside the box. How come the kids of Gaza can't see the beauty of what a Jewish person is, let alone Israel? Why is it that all of a sudden all these people that grow up in the Muslim Brotherhood only have hate for people that don't believe like them? You are in an American public school system. You're brought up to hate conservative values and anything that is not wacky. Go out in the street that you don't believe is you're wacky, but if you don't believe like me, we're going out the street and we're going to protest and break you down. This is a product. He doesn't see clearly what's going on in the world, and he can still say something like that. I have mercy on his soul. He's no different than a kid growing up in Gaza, brainwashed and doesn't know how to get out of his own way.
Yeah, and we're going to play some sound in a minute talking about, the far left congresswomen who are literally, Shirin, I mean, Nancy Mace will make this point, saying, we don't care if the women of Iran get their rights back. We don't care what happens to the women of Iran.
Well, these are the same women who have all of these freedoms in America. They were quiet when women were brutally raped in Israel during the war, and they are staying quiet now as well because they don't know what it's like to not have rights. So I'm not quite sure what's going on and what Kool-Aid they're drinking, but the truth is that we're not fighting just for the freedom of Iranian women. We are fighting for freedom here in America for our children and our grandchildren so that we won't lose these freedoms, because we are just one step away from that. And Donald Trump is doing everything he can to make sure that he keeps America safe and he keeps our freedoms here stable and safe.
Yeah, I want to go back to the military campaign if I can for a little bit and bring Steve Yates back into the conversation here. Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, he said just a couple of days ago, or 4 days ago, that he was not going to let the United States use military bases, right? And so changed his point on that, and is also the UK is kind of involved in this, not involved in firing weapons, but involved in protection. He said the following here.
Our partners in the Gulf have asked us to do more to defend them. And it is my duty to protect British lives. We have British jets in the air. as part of coordinated defensive operations, which have already successfully intercepted Iranian strikes.
I mean, you talk about back on board to a certain extent. It's important here. You talk about the UK and Germany and France. It really is kind of a backbone here for this mission, Steve.
Yes, it is. But really, Trace, I think this is just like our domestic politics. The people who have been gratuitous critics of Donald Trump just keep proving themselves to be small, irrelevant, and wrong. And I think that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom fits all three of those categories to a T. He has completely marginalized what was a once great and influential country. And it's great that he's committed now to this mission of protecting UK citizens. So what has he done to free Jimmy Lai from an unjust prison in Hong Kong? What material does he bring to bear? These great leaders of the old Europe, they don't have militaries anymore to come and make a difference. They're not have financial skin in the game the way they used to, and they've basically been passive observers. I hope this is a wake-up call and they'll be great again. I think that's what Secretary Rubio and Vice President Vance were trying to get them to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the sooner the entire global community comes together to recognize the threat that the Iran regime poses, the quicker we'll be able to collapse them and allow the Iranian people to manifest their own destiny. You're watching the moderate Gulf Arab states that have been drawn into this war, for example. They have very quickly understood that they can't play both sides, and they will very soon pivot to being part of the Abraham Accords, if they're not already, to being more Western, to helping the United States more so than they have to defeat this challenge. The bottom line is this: if our national security imperative here is that this regime cannot have a nuclear weapon, its existence is equal to having a nuclear weapon, meaning as much as we can diminish them, as much as we can take them back, as much as we can set them back, whatever happened in the 12-day war, they will continue the next day to build a nuclear weapon. So we can just stop at that. It doesn't have to be for human rights, even though it is. It doesn't have to be for the women of Iran, even though it is. It doesn't have to be to manifest what the people of Iran have done and want to do for their future, for democracy. It has to do with our national security. And I wish that people on both sides, including our allies, would understand that big threat.
Aaron.
I think I need to pull this back a little bit. The goal of this operation, Trace, was to dismantle the nuclear capability of the IRGC. Anything following that is the cherry on top. You cannot have a nuclear Iran. You cannot have leaders with their finger on the button of a nuclear weapon. So let's go ahead and neutralize them as well. Anything that happens moving forward after what we see with the next several thousand sorties over the next week, 2 weeks, probably tops, is icing on the cake. However, this next 72-hour window, look, this is a highly coordinated operation, Trace. This wasn't planned in 3 days. This has been planned in the works for months, if not a decade, to take out the Ayatollah. So the next 72 hours is going to determine what pushes forward next. But ultimately, the Iranian leadership in the middle of the besiege is going to have to be brought over, and I'm hoping that there's a plan in place for that.
Sheila.
One thing that we didn't mention about Europe, and by the way, where were they the last 2 days? Why did they wait to join their allies in going against the Islamic regime? I'll tell you why. They let so many Muslims into their country. We saw how they reacted when October 7th happened. They were pro-Hamas. They're at the whim of these Islamists that they've let into their countries, and we need to mention that.
Yeah. Rabbi.
Real quick. The world is not understanding why they can't have nuclear weapons. Why can't they? This is going on for almost 1,500 years, East religion versus West. And these people, and you have two sides. You have the Shia and you have the Sunni. You have nut jobs that will do anything to destroy the West. And that's what Iran is. It's a religion. I need to destroy you, so my God is the winner. And they want the nuke to destroy you. And the world just doesn't get it.
We talk about goals here. The president said this to NBC News. Put this on the screen. It's call for number 2. Number 1 is decapitating them, getting rid of their whole group of killers and thugs, says President Trump. And there are many, many outcomes. We could do the short version or the long version. Trump also said Iranian officials are interested in continuing talks with the U.S., but declined to say whether the U.S. will pause strikes during diplomatic efforts. I don't know, he said. If they can satisfy us, they haven't been able to. And of course, we told you the breaking news where Iran said tonight, we don't want to negotiate with the United States. Cameron Hamilton, I mean, we kind of talked about this earlier, but holy cow, the Iran people do not appear, as you look at the pictures on the right-hand side of the screen, to be in any position to dictate who negotiates when and where.
I think that's fair. They have no more leverage in negotiating chips for us. I think also the president has been so specific with his language. The U.S. Army Green Berets, the Special Forces, have a phrase called Dio presso liber, to liberate the oppressed. That is the exacting language that the president has used with a lot of his talking points in ensuring that the civilian populace rise up and reclaim their government. I think what he's hoping for is that whatever remnant of military leadership, which has been utterly decimated, will capitulate and see the writing on the wall that it's either surrender or death. My hope is that they'll do the former and not the latter. But nonetheless, we'll be prepared.
Steve Yates, your thoughts on this? Because I'm kind of curious when a country, it's almost like Baghdad Bob, where he kept coming out saying that, no, the tanks haven't arrived yet. It's almost like, oh, no, we're not ready to negotiate. I mean, it's so silly that it's laughable.
It is, but let's see what the message is in another couple more days. And I think that we're going to have fact patterns that change over time. I agree with some other comments that this period of the next couple of days is very, very critical. We don't know yet whether there's going to be follow-on things that happen in a far-off geography that could change the way we think about this whole situation. So there's still a lot of unknowns out there, but for now, this is steamrolling in the right direction, and I think we'll get a better fact pattern as it plays out.
You had Congressman Mike McCall, House Homeland Security Committee. He was talking about Iran, next steps, kind of the talking points all day. And he was saying that he believes, for all intents and purposes, that Iran now is on its own. He said the following here. Watch.
I would argue Iran now is on its own. It is alone in the Middle East. And now, for the first time, we have a chance to take out this regime and have a normalization process between the Arab nations and Israel and have this moment that the president wants to finally have peace in the Middle East. This is an extraordinary opportunity, and Iran now is as isolated as I've ever seen them.
Can't get more isolated when you go after the Arab countries in your neck of the woods, Lisa.
Well, that was a calculation that I believe backfired very, very poorly. The goal of the regime was, well, first of all, the goal is to use anything at this point because they know they're spiraling very quickly. The goal was to actually try to turn this into a huge conflict, to turn this into what the left here warned us. It was going to be a World War III, and that's exactly what Donald Trump wanted to prevent. They're hoping that the neighboring nations, the UN, all the advocacy groups will try to rein Donald Trump's administration back in to stop this war, to get a ceasefire, because he's getting this war expanding it to a place where they did not want it. At the same time, the fact that China, Russia, even Hezbollah did not come to their aid in the 12-day war, that's all part of the White House's calculation in all of this. When we said that they are at their weakest point ever, it's the economy. It's the fact that their proxies have been diminished. It's the fact that no one will come to their aid, and that's why we're here.
And speaking of calculations, the former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy talked about this. Watch.
Remember, we have not seen a world like this since the 1930s, where you had an axis of evil. It is called the crinks today. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. China has now tried to influence our hemisphere. President Trump has reversed that. Think of the embarrassment that America had after Joe Biden in Afghanistan. He has now made America stronger.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, you look at this thing and you say, okay, 1930s. Whenever somebody says 1930s, we know exactly what they're pinpointing here.
100%. Evil is a cancer, and the world is watching right now how we are surgically going after cancer. There's a lot of people that don't want us to do this because, like we've been saying, they hate Trump. But the best thing is happening to the world. The beauty is that we're taking out the Iranians. They're gone. Once they're gone, Israel is, and it's not just about Israel, but Israel is loved by many of the surrounding countries. They want to do business with Israel. The West is normal. The Sunnis are not out to destroy the world. Yeah. It is these people that are just, it's a religion. I know it's hard for everybody to understand. It's a religion mindset. You can't negotiate because they're looking for the 72 virgins. They believe God sent them for this.
Yeah, it's amazing. We have, since October 7th, Sharon, we have, kind of on a nightly basis, we keep saying, a lot of it is just not to repeat 1930, right? We say it again and again. Here we go. And we have Elizabeth Pipko on, who runs an online Holocaust museum, and we say this again and again, where we always revert back to a single year's decade in time.
Well, and that's why the United States of America is the greatest nation on earth, because we stand for liberty and freedom, and we will not allow for the greatest sponsor of terrorism to reign their terror around the world. And that is exactly why we have gone in and we are doing what we're doing. We're making sure that they cannot do what happened in the 1930s, that they can not oppress people around the world. This is not just about Iran. We've seen the proxies. We've seen the sleeper cells. We've seen what happened on college campuses. And if we don't stop it, yes, history will repeat itself. Never again now means we must stop. We must all thank President Trump for his leadership.
Yeah, we got to go, Aaron. But I look at what's happening, and I look at the way this thing came down, and you look at the Ayatollah being killed. You look at Yahya Sinwar. You look at, a few other names in there. Mossad, the Israeli military, has become very efficient.
Also, the U.S. military with Donald Trump's leadership. Look at what happened with Maduro.
Right.
President Trump isn't playing around.
Look at what happened with Operation Midnight Hammer.
Look at what happened with Khomeini. Look at what happened with now the Ayatollah, and then before that, Hassan Nasrallah. And we can go on and on. Mohammed Daif. The list goes on and on, plus 40 more of these leaders. President Trump is not afraid to flex the capability of the greatness and the greatest military in the world, and partnered with Israel with the intel. We have now restructured the entire face of the Middle East. The ideological radicals with their finger on the button are now neutralized. Let's see where we move with this thing next. We need to be careful, but let's just keep firing shots. We don't put any boots on the ground, and let the IRGC run out of air, and let's see where this thing turns up.
Nobody's raising hands. It looks like that's the final word, Aaron Cohen.
Alexander the Great took over the world and brought a lot of goodness to the world in his own way. Donald Trump is going to go down in history. We're going to see it 20, 25 years from now. What he did today and doing now is bringing a whole new world, that the world is looking for what's good about us instead of what's evil.
Also, I just want to say, Donald Trump has a plan. Today he actually said we're ahead of schedule, I quote. So he has a plan. There is a schedule. This whole leftist talking point of, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's so unplanned. Totally false. Donald Trump does not like to lose. He definitely went in with a plan.
Speaking of leftist talking points, that is coming up next on the agenda. Meantime,
hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.